Hey everyone, I thought I'd make a video just quickly going over how I use companions for subjugation, which ones are the best and which ones you should avoid. So just quickly, I'll put up a summary piece at the start of the video just so you can see all the main points and then you can click off if you just want to get into your subjugations. So I guess the main thing with companions is that in each wave for subjugation, you want to have an elemental support companion. Without that, you're definitely not going to be getting the most damage that you could possibly get. Secondly, you want to be using companions that have either attack buff, so Valiance abilities, or defense break abilities or render abilities. And then lastly, if you can't fill your companion slots with those first two, you can consider adding elemental shutdowns or healing, just basically as you need it. In the third wave, a lot of people do need an elemental shutdown or a healing companion just because of that AoE attack, which does massive damage at the start of the round. But if you're really pushing for those high SSS scores, you should be going for companions in the first two categories. And then just generally, this doesn't always apply, but in most cases you want to be using defense break companions in wave 2 with Celeb Gale, and then using your attack buff companions in waves 1 and 3. With the best ones generally in wave 3. So just quickly, there are different tiers of companions that offer different levels of buffs. So firstly, the books or the tomes and the Moogles will do the most elemental support or shutdown. Then the pods will do 18%, which is the second highest buff. In the third tier, there'll be bears and dolls, which will do 16% support or shutdown. And then lastly, dragons and spirits, which will do 14% support or shutdown. Which doesn't seem very logical to me, having dragons and spirits being the weakest companions, but whatever, that's how the game goes. So I'll just quickly run through the companions which provide elemental support for each element. So firstly, we have the light support companions with the Cooply Kip, I don't really know how to pronounce that, Moogle, Mock-Up Pod, Judith Bear, Sandra Bear, and the two dragons, Selenite and Calcite. I think all the dragons are named after minerals, sounds like. For the dark elemental supports, we have the Star and Song Tome, Andre Bear, and Amethyst Dragon. For fire, Heaven and Earth Tome, Satsuki, the Doll, and then the two dragons, Mikhail and Garnet. For water, there's the Domestic Pod, the Bear Patch, and the Dragon Appetite. And then lastly, the tome, Cause and Malice, excuse me, Indie Bear, and the dragon Peridot or Perido. I don't know how to say that. Alright, so they're all the elemental support companions. Obviously you want to use the books whenever you can, or the Moogles, because they have the greatest support buff. But it just depends on which ones you've leveled the most, so whichever ones provide you the greatest buffs, chuck them in your waves in subjugation. So next you want to think about what their abilities do. And attack buffs and defense breaks are going to give you the most damage in each wave on subjugation. So in terms of attack buff companions, there's 6 of them so far. Firstly, there's Grimoire Vice from Nier Replicant. He'll do a 30% attack up buff, and he's a dark book, so he's a really good companion. And it'll also give a strong void shutdown, so in the versus light subjugation, this guy is the GOAT. Secondly, there's the Star and Song tome, which will have dark support, and will do a 30% attack up as well, so again, really, really good. There's Satsuki the Doll, which will do a 15% attack buff. All of these last for 60 seconds, by the way. And also a Blaze Shutdown, so good for your water team against the Fire Moose. And there's the Dragon Calcite, which I missed out on when I wasn't playing the game, which is such a bummer. But he does a 10% attack buff, and what I would assume would be light support, but don't quote me on that, I don't have him. Then there's Mikhail the Dragon from Drakengard, Blaze support again, and then a 10% attack buff. And then lastly, the Spirit Matos, which is another Void Shutdown with a 10% attack buff. So all the buffs last 60 seconds. You want to be using Grimoire Vice and Star and Song with your strongest attacking units in order to try to get them to a 100% attack buff. Remember that companion skills can extend weapon skill buffs as well, so you want to try to work them in. I might make a video on extending buffs and things later on. Lastly, we have defense break companions. So there's 2 of them and they're both bears with Judith and Indy. They both do 25% defense breaks. Judith will give luminous support of 16% and Indy will give whirlwind support, so wind support for 16% as well. Both of those also last 60 seconds. And they're pretty good to combo with another defense break character. They're not always the best to pair with Celeb Gale though, because her debuff lasts 30 seconds already. So you might want to consider attack buffs with Celebratory Gale, depending on who's doing the most damage in your waves. Lastly, I'll just quickly mention some of the companions that do healing. I won't go through the shutdowns. You can kind of figure out which ones do shutdown by yourself. It's really not ideal to have shutdown companions unless you're really struggling to survive, particularly in the Quest 4 difficulty. But you want to be slabbing your characters to the point where you don't need elemental shutdowns, except for maybe in the last wave. So there's a few pods that'll do 30% healing. A few companions, sorry. They're really good if you're really struggling to survive the final wave in Quest 4. So the 3 companions that do that are firstly the light pod, the mock-up pod. It'll do 10% heal each turn, as well as luminous support, so handy versus the dark subjugation to buff your light characters and to keep them alive. There'll be the new companion, the Moogle, Koopli Kip. Don't know how to pronounce that. That'll do an instant 30% heal, which is by far the best heal out of all the companions. And also luminous support as well. And then finally there's the light book. Can't remember the name of it, sorry, but the light book will do 10% heal each turn for 3 turns. So in total 30% healing, but not an instant heal like the Moogle. So they're your 3 good healing companions. Basically every light companion will heal though in some capacity. Wish there was a little bit more diversity there. So that's kind of a summary of companions for Season 1 of Subjugation anyway. In the future I'd be pretty interested to see if they add a pursuit buff to any of the companions or a critical damage up. I think both of those would be very high tier companions if they were to be released. Maybe they won't get released because they'd be too strong, but you never know, we'll see. One that I should also briefly mention is that Heaven and Earth tome, the fire buff. He's an interesting one because he'll increase the critical rate by 30% for 60 seconds. Obviously, you want to be trying to get memoirs to get your characters to 100% crit rate or high 90s. But if you're struggling with your memoir farming or you're early in your account progress, you could consider using the Fire book in order to boost the crit rate of your team as well. So that's the summary of all the companions. Get out there and get those triple S1 scores. I think there's another 2 days left of this season of Subjugation, so get those scores as quickly as you can. I'll catch you guys in the next video.